Alright, what we have is a 2004 Taurus with the 3-liter single overhead cam. And our customer complaint here was that she had EGR flow codes. So she brings the car to me. Oh, and by the way, she had just brought it to a shop and they had changed the oil. I think someone caused this problem on purpose, to be honest with you, but that's beside the point. Anyway, she brings it to me. She said, hey, I'm having trouble codes. I start looking around at the EGR system because when you get something in and it doesn't matter what you're fixing, the first thing you always want to do is just look. See what's happening. So I start looking, and here's our EGR valve and the vacuum hose is on it, and I follow the hose down to the bottom of the solenoid here, and all the hoses are fine. And we get here to our DPFE sensor, or our EGR sensor, whatever you'd like to call it. And on the bottom of it, what we have is a hose that's popped off. Now, whether this hose was pulled off or fell off by itself, I don't know, but we're going to try and get you a shot of it real quick so you can see it. Okay, I've got the camera down here. Do you see right in the center of the screen there's an open hose, and that's the hose off of our DPFE sensor. So for whatever reason it's off, and I'm sure that's what's causing our trouble codes, but just to be sure, we're going to reattach that hose and we're going to go over this whole system, and I'm going to show you how to check everything just in case you have any kind of EGR codes. So here we go. Okay, so we're back. We had to replace that DPFE sensor because right off the bat when I tried to put the hose back onto it, I realized that the little ports where the hose goes on were actually broken off into the hose. So it's got a new sensor and hoses. But first we have to test everything else before we can just call it done. And I'm going to start by testing this EGR solenoid. And the first thing I'm going to do, you'll see here, I have a pin inside this brown wire, and on the bottom it has a pink tracer. Now, I've already looked up on a diagram. I know that is the control wire for this computer, so that's the one I'm going to want. Now, it's a fairly simple system. The only thing that is a little solenoid. You click it, you put it on power and ground, and it clicks. And what happens when it clicks is it's opening, and when it opens, it puts vacuum to our EGR valve, and when we do that, what should happen is the engine should start to run really, really rough, and it might even die. So, if it does that, we know everything's working properly. So I'm going to have my assistant go start the car. Okay, well, as you saw when I put the test light on there, nothing happened. That means one of two things. Either the solenoid is bad or I don't have a good connection. So I'm going to check connections and I'm going to try it again and I'll be right back with you. And we're back. Alright, what happened is we just had a bad connection, so I got a better one on there. Now, like I was saying, as soon as that wire gets touched to ground and we ground out that circuit, the solenoid should open, putting vacuum to our EGR valve and making the car run really bad. Might even shut off on us. So, we're going to try that. Go ahead. Hear how terrible it runs every time he does that? He takes it off, it runs better. Alright, now what the heck does that mean, Ben? What the hell are you making me do this for? What that test confirms is that all of our vacuum hoses are good, our EGR valve is good, our EGR passages are good, this solenoid is good. Everything works. That tests everything except for the DPFE sensor that we replaced, which I'm going to show you how to test next. Now, if that didn't work and we suspected a bad solenoid and we wanted to just test the EGR valve separately, what we can do is pop the cap off this, which you see I've done, and there's a static port right here in the middle. You see that little hole there? You put your finger over that and that sends instant vacuum to everything. And what that confirms is that your EGR valve works and your vacuum lines are okay. So that's a way to bypass the solenoid if you want to just test the EGR valve by itself. So we're going to go ahead and shut it off, and I'm going to hook up to the DPFE, then I'll give you a shot of that and show you what I'm looking for. Alright, so what we're going to do next is we're going to test this DPFE sensor, or EGR pressure sensor, whichever you want to call it. This is a 3-wire sensor, and what we're going to have on this sensor, one wire is going to be a ground, one is going to be a 5-volt reference that has 5 volts all the time, and one is going to be our signal wire. So, and what we're trying to determine which one's which here. So what we're going to do these one at a time, and you always do these one at a time, because if you ground the wrong thing or touch two together, you can fry the engine computer. One at a time here, and we're going to back probe these wires, and we're going to start checking voltages. So that one is 5 volts, so that's probably my 5-volt ref. Alright, I believe this middle one was the ground, but it's been a while since I've done this. I've got a good connection. Yep, that's our ground. 1 millivolt, that's a good ground. And this one should be our signal wire, if I have a good connection. There we go. It should, well, hold on. Oh, I understand why. When you unplug this, your signal wire goes straight up to 5 volts. That's how, that actually was a test. I just confirmed that my computer drivers are working correctly. So I'm going to plug this in, and I'm going to stay on this one that said 5 volts. I'm going to see if it changes. And now it says 1 volt. Alright, well right off the bat, that's a good DPFE. That's a good reading for idle engine off. What we're going to do now is we're going to hook our test light back up, and we're going to reactivate the solenoid the way we were. And what we want to see when the EGR is activated is for this to go up to 5 volts. Well, roughly 5 volts. 4.6, 4.7 is fine. But it's got to be above 4.5 volts, almost 5. And that'll confirm that our DPFE is working properly. And we've already confirmed the ground of the power for it because we were just checking wires. And at that point, if this works properly and the solenoid works properly and our EGR works properly, then the EGR system is just fine. And if you're still getting trouble codes, you've got other problems. So we're going to get you a shot of testing this, and then, you know, that'll be it, because I suspect this is going to work just fine. But you always test it to make sure. Alright, we've got everything set up. We've got our meter on our DPFE sensor. We're still reading 1 volt. I have that back probe. I've got my test light set up. I'm going to have him come record for me while I show this to you. What should happen is when I touch that and that valve activates, we should watch the voltage on our meter go up. So he's going to record. Okay, we rechecked our connections. I'm going to go ahead and touch this. You're going to hear the engine get really rough, and you're going to see the voltage go up on the meter. You ready? Okay, I hit 4.7, 4.8, something like that. Alright. So what that means is that our DPFE sensor is recording, our solenoid works just fine, our EGR valve works just fine, our vacuum hoses are intact, our EGR passages are intact. There's nothing wrong with this EGR system right now. Oh, one more note. If you do this and the engine gets a little bit rough but not super rough, you want to check your EGR passages that are inside your intake here. If they aren't clear, the engine won't get really rough. And I believe that's all that I can think about, guys. I hope I helped somebody. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this. And everybody have a good day.